Good evening, my name is Camila Ramirez, and I'm going to present the documents and the sources that I found that support my research project. So first I'm going to present my research question, that is, what online speaking strategies in the EFL learning process motivate the students and create a positive academic experience for them. So I found 20 documents, 19 of them were articles of investigation, and just one of them was a thesis. This thesis was carried out in Sweden and was developed by two authors, two students that were applying to get their professional degree in the education field. The other documents, as I said before, were articles of investigation and were from different countries. So most of the authors were from the country that they carried their investigation in, but other ones were from other countries. However, they developed the whole investigation in these countries, and actually most of them worked with students that were their population and were from these countries. So in this case, for example, these authors, Maria Agreda Labrador and Daniel Pascual Oliva, carried out an investigation in Spain with Spanish students. So most of the authors carried out the investigation with population from these countries. So it was very interesting to find the different contrasts between one culture and the other, because as you can see, there are students, population from Spain and also from Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, from South America, such as Costa Rica and Mexico. So it was very interesting. Most of the articles of investigation presented research projects that were developed with students as population. So next I'm going to present the specific patterns and discussions and research problems that were presented in these documents analyzed. Okay, so I divided the information found in the documents into 4 categories: trends, debates, patterns, and research problems. Okay, there were 4 main trends found in the documents. The first one was the teacher-student relationships. Most of the authors gave importance to the teacher-student relationships because most of the students expressed that they cared about the empathetic communication with their teachers and the recognition of their perceptions by their teachers. So it was found that, in fact, when teachers were assertive with their students, they felt more motivated and get better academic results during the EFL learning process. The next trend was the strategies to motivate the students. So it was found that after the implementation of every strategy, it was important to listen to the students' point of view about it. So, for example, when some authors, some researchers applied a specific learning strategy with their population, their students, after that they asked the students if they liked the activity, if it was significant for their learning process, and so on. So it was found that when every time a teacher presents or develops a strategy with their students, they have to make sure that the results are good and that they feel motivated towards that specific strategy. The next thing that was important in this part was the definition of motivation. Most of the authors pointed out that it was important that teachers identified if their students had intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, so that their strategies were related or had to do with their specific interests, the interest that the students had in learning English. Okay, the next thing is the interaction and dynamism in the classroom. It was for all of the students was important. The interaction and the dynamism in the classroom. They liked different activities, different strategies that were not more, that were not something boring for them, but something that kept them interested in the EFL learning process. Okay, the next trend was improvement of the learning process. So most of the authors found out that to improve the learning process, it was important that the students developed critical thinking by using some routines, some thinking routines in the classroom, some specific strategies of organization of ideas, such as group debates, mind maps, and so on. And finally, it was also important the analysis of context, but this had to do more with the teachers than with the students. So the authors pointed out that it was important that teachers identified the context that they were in. And finally, it was also found out that the learning strategies had to be engaging, and also that the creation of a safe environment was very important, so that the students felt motivated and also get good results in the learning process. So these were the most common categories that the authors pointed out in the improvement of the learning process. And finally, the other trend was technological, the implementation of technological tools. So it was found that the use of technological tools supports and improves the students' learning process. So, for example, when the authors wanted to know if a specific technological tool was good for the students and for the teachers, they implemented that tool in the classroom, and then compared the academic results before the implementation of the tool and after the implementation of the tool. In fact, it was found that after the implementation of the tool, the learning results were better than before. So it was very interesting to find out that the students can get better results when some technological tools are involved in the learning process. In this part, it's important to take into account that some technical issues came up, but with some capacitations for the teachers and for the students, these problems can disappear. So it is important that the students, both the students and the teachers, get used to the implementation of technological tools in the classroom. Okay, the next category is the debates. There were three main debates. The first one was the efficiency of specific teaching strategies. As I said before, they were tested with some students. There was also a debate about the reasons why students don't feel motivated to learn English, such as, for example, the fear of failure, but the bad results in the tests, and also the fact that some students do not have neither intrinsic nor extrinsic motivation, so they don't see a point in learning English. So some conclusions were drawn from these problems, and some strategies to deal with these situations were proposed by the authors. Finally, the other debate was the importance of previous learning experiences for the current EFL learning process. So in this part, the authors pointed out that if the students have a bad previous experience or do not have enough knowledge to continue a specific learning process, teachers have to deal with these situations. So it is important that teachers identify the previous experiences, personal and academic experiences that the students have, so that they can change the strategies that they implement in the classroom. Okay. The next category was the patterns. In general, the investigations were carried out um, from a qualitative paradigm, because it was better to analyze the results. Basically, they were interviews and class observations, so it was important to analyze it from a qualitative point of view. The next pattern was that the students' opinions were highly taken into account. So the surveys, interviews, and written questionnaires were presented, were applied with some students, and their perceptions were very important for the researchers. And the next pattern was that the results were shown in form of analysis and or charts, specifically in the investigations that followed a mixed paradigm. I mean, the mixture between the qualitative and the quantitative paradigm. In these investigations, the results were shown first from a quantitative point of view. The results were shown in charts with numbers and the quantitative strategies, and then they were analyzed from a qualitative point of view. So in these cases, the investigations were like very complete, because the both points of view were important for the results presented. Okay, and finally we have the research problems. There were three specific research problems that were presented in most of the investigations. The first one was the lack of opportunities to practice speaking in the classroom. So some students complained about the fact that the language classes are focused on receptive skills and writing. So they didn't have the opportunity to speak and to put into practice the language. So the researchers tried to discover what strategies the teachers could implement in the classroom, so that the students have the opportunity to speak and to practice the oral communication. The other research problem was the demotivation of the students to learn English, as I said before, because of previous experiences, or because of bad results in the test, or because of some specific evaluation strategies that sometimes the teachers implement and that the students do not get results in. So it was found that the fact that the students are demotivated is very important, because that could generate a lot of problems for both the teachers and the students, because if they're not motivated, they won't be able to continue successfully the learning process. Okay, the last problem was the lack of students' participation. In general, it was found that some students do not participate in the classes, and when they were asked about it, they expressed that it was because of their lack of knowledge in the target language, so they didn't feel capable of speaking or of communicating in the target language. They didn't feel interested in the topics that were being discussed, so they didn't take part in the debates. They also expressed that they had a fear of being judged by the teacher and the students, so they felt that if they made mistakes while talking, they would be judged by the teacher or the student, so they preferred not to talk. And the last reason was that some students were demotivated to learn, and they also felt that they were failing the whole process, so they didn't feel like speaking in the classroom. So finally, I'm gonna tell a final conclusion about how this information was important for my research project. Okay, the information that I just show is relevant for my research project because, as you could see, my research question has three main categories. The first one is the online speaking strategies. As you could see, there were some analysis about the use of technological tools, also the motivation in the EFL classroom, and finally the academic experiences. So those are the three categories that are being taken into account in my research project, and the information that I just presented has to do with these three categories. So I think this is it. I found this exercise very relevant for my project, and I could get a better idea about what I should do and what strategies I should follow so that the research is successful and productive for the pedagogical field. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.